Welcome to Temple of the Human Heart, where love is the doctrine, compaction is the practice, awakening is the work. Here we seek first the kingdom within. As you return to yourself, what was fragmented begins to gather again.
Welcome to the Temple of the Human Heart. I'm your host, April. This is the place where love is the doctrine, compassion is the practice, and awakening is the work. Our pillar statement is simple. Seek first the kingdom within, and as you return to yourself, what was fragmented begins to gather again. What was scattered begins to come home, and what was broken begins to remember itself. So if you're here today, I want you to settle in, breathe, relax your shoulders, and let's enter this lesson together. Because today we're talking about something familiar, but maybe not as safe as we thought. Love your neighbor as yourself. That sounds beautiful. That sounds holy. That sounds like wisdom. But for a lot of us, that phrase has landed in places we didn't expect. And for some of us, it has even become painful. Today's message is this: love others as I love myself. Nope. Not because the teaching is wrong, but because many of us were never truly taught how to love ourselves in the first place. So let me start here. At Leviticus 19:17-18, you shall not hate your brother in your heart. You shall surely rebuke your neighbor and not bear sin because of him. You shall not take vengeance, nor bear any grudge against the children of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. The second is this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these. And that's Mark 12:31. But what if the command to love your neighbor as yourself was never meant to assume that every self is healthy? What if it was meant to reveal something? What if it was meant to expose the condition of the one doing the loving? Because if I don't know how to love myself with truth, with compassion, with boundaries, with care, then what exactly am I using as the model for how I love other people? And that question changes everything, because many of us were taught love in a way that was not really love. We were taught transaction. We were taught obligation. We were taught sacrifice without softness. We were taught endurance without reflection. And we were taught to be strong, but not necessarily whole. We were taught to give, but not necessarily to receive. And so when we hear love your neighbor as yourself, we may not realize that we're bringing all of that into the verse with us. We may be interpreting it through pain, through survival, through wounds we never got to name. So I had to learn how to love myself after abuse, after violations, after rejection, after abandonment. And I have to be honest with you, learning how to love others as I love myself was painful because of how I was taught to love. And honestly, I don't even think I was truly taught love. I was taught transaction. I was taught you do this for me and I'll do that for you. I was taught if you show up for me in this way, then I'll love you back. I was taught that love had conditions, that it had expectations, that it had a price. Even with God, I carried that same mindset. As long as I prayed, my prayers should be answered. And not years later, not after a long, drawn-out process, but now. I remember I would get so upset with God because I knew I prayed for something. And I'm reading Mark and I'm reading all these other verses that say just pray. Use supplication. Just keep praying. And God is going to open up a window and pour out blessings as long as you do this and as long as you do that. But that's what I learned. I mean, if you told me to do this, then surely you were going to do that. If I obeyed, then I should receive. If I gave, then I should get. So my definition of love became transactional. And I had to realize that I was carrying some pattern into everything. I was carrying that same pattern into everything. My love language became, I give, you give back. You give, I give back. That was the rhythm I knew. That was the pattern I understood. And Spirit had to take a long and patient time with me, changing the way I viewed love. Because that kind of transformation does not happen overnight. It has to be unraveled. It has to be redefined. And it had to be healed. So who taught you how to love? That's part of the reason why I wrote Who Taught You How to Love. Because in most cases, we need to redefine love. We need to ask where our definition came from. We need to ask whether what we call love is actually love, or whether it's survival wearing love's clothing, especially in the Black culture. Because so often we learn love through hardship, through obligation, through performance, through being the one who holds everything together, through being strong, through being the one who never breaks, through being the one who keeps going even when we're tired, hurt, and depleted. But that is not always love. Sometimes that is just survival. Sometimes it's simply endurance. And then sometimes that is just the ability to keep functioning in environments that never taught us how to be soft, how to be honest, how to say, this is what I need, or this is what hurts me, or this is too much for me. And when you don't have language for your needs, you often cannot communicate them. And when you can't communicate them, you often cannot receive love in a healthy way. So when I started reflecting on this, I had to ask myself, who taught me how to love? What did I learn love was supposed to look like? And who benefited from that version of love? Because sometimes the way we were taught love was really about keeping everybody else comfortable while we disappeared. So let's talk about the danger in loving someone the way I want to be loved. So this is why loving someone the way I wanted to be loved became dangerous for me. Because I was giving that kind of love to people who were undeserving of it. Not because they were automatically evil, but because I didn't have the discernment to understand who I should be giving that love to and how much access they should have to me. Because the Bible verse doesn't say, be specific in who you give it to. It doesn't say, only give this love to people who will handle it well. It even doesn't say be careful of the ones who will take and take and take until you are exhausted and overextended and overgiving and bending over backwards. It just says love your neighbor as yourself. And if your relationship with yourself is wounded, then that verse can become a mirror you didn't know was going to reflect back your pain. Because if I abandon myself, then I teach others that abandonment is normal. If I silence myself, then I build relationships where my voice disappears. If I believe I have to earn love, then I spend my life trying to earn love from everyone around me. So the issue is not the command. The issue is the condition of the one receiving the command. That's where the tension is. That's where the pain is. And that's where the awakening begins. So let's put on our temple lens. What if Jesus wasn't lowering the standard of love to whatever your self-worth happened to be? What if he was exposing it? What if the command was never meant to flatter us? What if it was meant to reveal us? Because the way you love yourself becomes the way you eventually love everybody else. If you abandon yourself, you will normalize abandonment. If you ignore your own needs, you will teach people that your needs are optional. But if you stay silent in the face of harm, you may create relationships where your silence is expected. If you live in constant self-sacrifice without discernment, you may end up calling depletion love. And that is not what the command is meant to produce. The verse is not just about instruction, it's revelation. It's a mirror. It says, look at how you treat your own heart. Look at how you respond to your own pain. Look at what you do when you need rest. Look at whether you honor your own yes or your own no. Because how you love yourself matters. Not just because you deserve it, but because it becomes the pattern for every relationship around you. So let's look at the reframe. And we're going to shift the question. So instead of asking, am I loving others enough? We start to ask, how have I been loving myself? That's the more honest question. And it's more difficult. But on top of everything, it's more healing. Because now we are not just measuring performance. We are looking at the source. Where is my love coming from? Is it coming from wholeness? Or is it coming from wounds? Is it coming from truth? Or is it coming from fear? Is it coming from compassion? Or is it coming from a desperate need to be wanted? Because wounded love looks like overgiving, people-pleasing, over-explaining. Wounded love looks like tolerating what you should not tolerate. Wounded love looks like shrinking yourself so someone else can stay comfortable. But healed love is different. Healed love has boundaries. Healed love has wisdom. It has self-respect. Healed love knows that compassion and self-abandonment are not the same thing. Healed love knows that giving and disappearing are not the same thing. That being loving does not mean being available to anything and everything, anyone and everyone as well. So this is where I have to slow down, because I think that this is an important part that gets misunderstood a lot. When people hear love one another as I have loved you, their mind often goes straight to sacrifice. So let me go back, because I want to explain what that means. So let's go to John 13:34. Jesus says, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another just as I have loved you. You also are to love one another." And immediately, had I still been in religion, I would have jumped to that and said, you know what? Jesus sacrificed everything for us, according to the Bible. So if he can sacrifice for me, then I should be able to sacrifice for another, right? Because when we look at what Jesus did, we don't often look at who he was before the sacrifice, who he was before the cross. So when you hear love one another as I have loved you, your mind often goes straight to sacrifice, straight to the cross, straight to self-denial. And while the cross matters, that cannot be the only picture we carry of Jesus' love. Because the real question is not just how Jesus died. The real question is how Jesus lived. So before the cross, Jesus showed us what divine love looks like in real time. He healed without controlling. He told the truth without condemning. He withdrew when he needed to pray. He rested. He set boundaries. He walked away from people who wanted to throw him off of a cliff. He did not entrust himself to everyone. And that is the part that matters. Because Christ did not reveal love through self-abandonment. He revealed love through alignment with the Father. And that's why this next verse becomes so important. When Jesus said, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also are to love one another." So now the measure is no longer my wounded self. It is no longer my survival self. It's no longer my fragmented self. The measure becomes the life of Christ. And that changes everything. Because if I only think of love as sacrifice, I may keep emptying myself in places where God never asked me to disappear. But if I understand the love of Christ as truth, compassion, wisdom, boundaries, and obedience to the Father, then I begin to see that real love does not require self-erasure. Real love is not control, guilt, enabling. It's not overgiving until I have nothing left. But real love is aligned, is aware. Real love is whole. So when I say love others as I love myself, I'm not talking about loving from a wounded place. I'm talking about the process of being healed enough to love in a way that looks like Christ. And then sometimes that means I have to stop confusing sacrifice with love. Sometimes that means I have to stop confusing guilt with compassion. And then sometimes that means I have to stop confusing access with intimacy. Because if I keep loving from pain, I will keep recreating pain. But if I return to myself and I allow Christ to reshape what love means, then I can finally love others without losing myself in the process. So this is what we do in the return. This is where it comes in. Before you can truly love your neighbor, you have to return to yourself. But not the version of you shaped by fear or trauma or survival, but the version of you that is whole. The version of you that is learning how to tell the truth. The version of you that is learning how to sit with your own needs instead of shaming them. The version of you that is learning how to receive without guilt. And the version of you that is learning how to set boundaries without an apology. Because as you return to yourself with compassion, something changes. You stop loving from emptiness. You stop pouring from wounds. You stop confusing overextension with virtue. And your love becomes cleaner. It becomes clearer and wiser. But not because you're trying harder, but because you're becoming more whole. And that is the return. In my teaching, I like to give an everyday example because, right now I'm teaching from the Bible. And I've said at other times that I'm also going to teach from ancient text, Gnostic text. But I like to apply what I'm teaching to a modern day example. So I want you to imagine a woman whose adult son calls only when he needs money. Every time he asks, she gives because she believes love means sacrifice. So in doing that, she ignores her own bills, loses sleep, and feels guilty whenever she says no. But she calls it love. At this point, this woman walks in self-abandonment. She gives and she gives and she gives, and she thinks that her abandoning herself, her sacrifices is what's going to make her son love her more. She calls it love. But has she actually helped him become whole? Because remember, going back, we awaken, we remember, and we return. And in order for us to do that, we have to become whole individuals, returning the male, masculine, and the female energies into one. So imagine she says, I love you too much to keep feeding a pattern that is harming both of us. Here's where she places boundaries. Because remember earlier, she was ignoring her own bills. She lost sleep, and she felt guilty whenever she said no. So imagine she says, now I love you too much to keep feeding a pattern that is harming both of us. I will always be your mother, but I will no longer finance your self-destruction. We don't know why he was coming asking for money over and over and over again. He didn't think about whether her bills were being paid or she was giving from an empty well. He just knew that his mom, he had needs and mama was going to give it. But once she put up that boundary, she didn't stop loving, but she did stop abandoning herself. And then sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to refuse to participate in another person's brokenness. And we can bring this back to Jesus. Jesus loved completely, yet he never became controlled by the expectations of the crowd. He fed thousands, but he also crossed the lake alone. He healed many, but not every person in Israel. He welcomed people, yet he also said no, walked away, and waited. His love was guided by truth, not by guilt. Christ did not reveal love through self-abandonment. He revealed love through perfect alignment with the Father. The cross was the consequence of that alignment, not the definition of love itself. So let me ask you something. If everyone loved others exactly the way they currently love themselves, what kind of world would we create? Would it be a world of peace? A world of honesty? Would it be a world where people feel seen, safe, and secure? Or would it be a world of silence? A world of overgiving? Or a world of emotional exhaustion? Would it be a world where everyone is trying to be enough for somebody else while never learning how to be at home in themselves? And that question matters because it reveals the difference between performance and transformation. It reveals whether we have truly understood love or whether we have only learned how to survive it. For some of us, the hard part is not loving other people. The hard part is unlearning what we were told love was. Because if love was tied to performance, then we will always feel like we have to earn it. If love was tied to sacrifice without care, then we will always think our pain is the proof of our devotion. If love was tied to people using us, then we will confuse being needed with being loved. And that has to be healed. Not judged, not rushed, healed. Because once the definition changes, everything changes. The way you talk to yourself changes. The way you answer people changes. The way you choose relationships changes. The way you pray changes. The trust changes. How you rest changes. How you give changes. And even how you receive changes. Because now love is no longer a transaction. It's a state of being. It's a way of returning. And it's a way of honoring the image of God within you. So no, love others as I love myself is not something we rush past. We slow it down a little bit. We sit with it, and we let it challenge us. We let it expose the places where we've been living from pain instead of wholeness. Because the goal is not just to love others. The goal is to become whole so that love flows from truth and not trauma. And if that means we have to go back and ask hard questions about what we learned, who taught us, what we normalized, and what we still need to heal, then that is the part of the work. That is the part of the awakening. That is a part of the returning. And so I'll leave you with this. The temple of the human heart is not just a place of ideas. It is a place of return. A place where love is the doctrine, compassion is the practice, and awakening is the work. Our pillar statement remains: seek first the kingdom within. And as you return to yourself, what was fragmented begins to gather again. What was scattered begins to come home. What was wounded begins to speak. And what was hidden begins to heal. If this message spoke to you, share it with someone who needs it. Connect with us on all socials at Temple of the Human Heart. Email us at info@awakenandreturn.com and visit us at www.awakenandreturn.com to listen to more lessons, learn more about the work, and purchase merchandise. Until next time, keep returning, keep awakening, and keep seeking the kingdom within.